Hello friends, and welcome to a very special episode of the Urban Homesteading channel. If today is your first time visiting with us, we want to extend you a very warm welcome and invite you to watch any of our over 480 videos arranged for your convenience in playlists, as we are very confident you're going to find something both entertaining and useful to view. If you've been here before but you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Do subscribe. If today is your birthday, we want to wish you a very happy birthday. In today's episode, we are going to veer away from our normal content in honor of Easter. Our family is a Greek Eastern family. So our Easter Sunday is today, was not last week. And we're going to take you along in preparing a nice, almost traditional, with the ability we have with COVID, I don't know the name right. And the limitations, we have to find the proper cooking ingredients. So we'll take you along for a small trip to Greece through urban America and talk to you about how we prepare a traditional Greek Easter meal. In Greece, food is central to most everything, and of course religion and food are interconnected, and religion is a big part of the Greek culture. And Eastern Orthodoxy throughout the world, not just in Greece, but throughout the world, celebrating Easter today, which is April 19th, 2020, correct?
Yes.
Got the date right. I got something right today. So we're going to take you through this virtual trip through an American Greek kitchen and the way we prepare a traditional Greek meal. So I hope you enjoy this rather different episode from us, and let us know in the comments if you want to say something more similar in the future. So stick around.
Sierra's helping.
We have to turn the movie up a bit.
The movie?
The music.
That one. That's the only thing I hate about filming.
What's that?
Never have any good music playing.
So this is usually where we start, and that's with the preparation of spanakopita, spinach pie. So what we have in the bowl are eggs and green onion, lots of dill, and then what you can't see is the cut up spinach. Lots of spinach. We use an entire container of spinach on this because it makes it so delicious.
Just like the way the old Greeks did it. Went to the store and bought a container of spinach.
Right. You know, and then you have to have lots of olive oil because that gives the main flavor to it. So I'm just going to add some more.
And because Greek.
And because it's Greek. Although this oil did not come from Greece, it came from Italy.
We cannot use it then.
And then feta cheese, which also
Came from
Greek
Italy?
style, but it did not come from Greece. This one came from Wisconsin. Where Greek cows live.
Is that where Greek cows live?
Yes.
They immigrated to Wisconsin?
Yes. So I'm also going to add some pepper, and once I get this all mixed together, this is going to be the filling for our spinach pie. We're going to call it spanakopita from now on, now that you know what it is. And feta cheese always comes in a little bit of brine. They take it out of brine and put it in the packaging, so it's very crumbly by the time you get it. So you just crumble it up.
The brine makes it crumbly?
No, the brine keeps it to have moisture and flavor while it's waiting to be packaged up and used. In Greece, they take it right out of the brine, put it in a little sack, and take it home, I imagine, from the store, rather than in a package like this. There's some of the brine. It's got a very, well, it's goat cheese, right?
It can be. It usually say what animal. I think this is cow, because they have a cow in the picture.
Ah, yes, it says pasture-raised cows, so it's not traditional feta, which would be from goats typically, but it has the same flavor and texture. And it is salty cheese. And it melts quite differently than typical shredded cheeses that we're used to in the States.
Does it even melt?
It does to a degree. It doesn't stay chunky like this. It still has some body to it, but it does get a little bit, I mean, it melts and blends with the flavors to some degree, but it does hold its...
A piece escaped.
A piece escaped. Well, that's what food does in our house. It jumps. It jumps on the floor, it jumps on the counter. So I'm going to do 2 bricks of the feta here in this because we love our spanakopita to be very cheesy.
We're very cheesy people.
We're very cheesy, yes. And this bowl is, you know, a little bit small for the volume I'm putting in it, but it's going to mix up just fine, and some of it will jump out of the bowl as I'm mixing it, but that will be just fine too. Oh, I didn't see it because it's behind me.
There, I opened your cheese.
In El Pida is the sous-chef. Is that the correct term?
Yep.
I don't know what that means, but I've heard it.
Preps.
That's what it means?
I believe so.
She's the production assistant.
Boy, what a big bowl you have there.
It's a monster bowl, but it's not monster enough because we like our filling in our spanakopita. Of course, the star of the show is not the filling. The star of the show is the filo, which is the pastry part.
Do you need some more olive oil in there?
I will in a minute. I'm going to make sure that all the eggs get mixed up here. Of course, Easter, a lot of it is about eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So we put 5 eggs in this recipe. And we're boiling some more eggs because what would Easter be without Easter eggs? Now, in the Greek tradition, eggs represent what?
It's the birth, right? Plus it tastes good.
The birth.
Yeah, that's where life comes from, eggs.
So it's a new life on Easter.
Yes.
We have been given new life because of the resurrection. It's starting to stick together.
Is that the sign? Stickiness?
Well, it's not sticky. It's blending. Let's just say, and you can see the moisture. We're gonna need a little bit more olive oil here.
Give me just a second.
And it doesn't really matter if you remove the stems from the spinach. We use fresh spinach, not frozen. And it does come with some stems. You can see some little pieces in there. And that's fine. It cooks up just the same as the leaves. Yep. Good.
And the other onion that I cut, does that go in the spanakopita or the other?
No, it goes in the fricassee.
And the apartment kitchen was not designed for filming.
Or for more than one person. Just for the
So it is almost a galley style kitchen, not quite. It's smaller than that because it's kind of stunted here on the end, but it's that size.
The eggs are boiling.
Yes.
So probably need to turn those down and let them cook a bit.
Do you want a timer on?
Sure.
How long?
How long do you cook eggs? I usually cook them about 8 minutes.
You want it lower than medium?
Yeah, as long as they're not completely trying to jump out of the saucepan. Okay, so this is good, and we're going to let it set for a little bit while we prepare the phyllo.
So probably if you know how to do this, you know how to mix concrete.
You're comparing this to concrete? I don't think...
You don't get to eat any. I will take your share.
No, I'm comparing the preparation.
Well, the preparation is just mixing ingredients. So if we had, if we had a concrete mixer here, we could just throw in the eggs and the phyllo and the spinach, everything, and it would pour out for us into the pie plate. That would be,
That might be a new production.
Good. But this is way tastier than concrete, just for the record.
I didn't say it is.
And it smells amazing because of all the fresh things that we've cut up in here.
Portland cement doesn't smell bad. Here we are in a very tiny kitchen trying to do this complex dish.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you what it is that I buy for this. It's called phyllo dough, and you can buy it in most every grocery store. You might find it in the same area of the store where you would get pie crust or a puff pastry. And puff pastry might look very similar on the box, but it's definitely not the same thing. So these are very thin sheets that you have to put a layer of oil or butter or something in between. And what happens is that they separate a little bit during baking, so that makes a very flaky, tall, layered type of pastry. This is what we use for spanakopita, and it comes in rolls like this. This box comes with 2 rolls. Typically I use only one. We'll see how it goes because every brand is a little bit different. Some of them are rolled kind of on the short length. Some of them are rolled on a long length, so it depends when you get the brand and you open it up to see what you have. And it does come frozen, so you have to allow some time for it to thaw. I usually put it in the refrigerator a couple of days before using it, and then let it sit out on the counter as well for a little bit before using it. And the reason for that is if it's too cold and you unroll it, it can start to break. So you really want it to be fairly room temperature before you start working with it. We also need butter.
That's butter?
This is melted butter, and this is what's going to go between each layer of the phyllo so that it can do the rising magic that it's going to do.
And you also did a nonstick spray in the pan to
Yes,
start us
I
off.
did prepare the pan so that the sheets of dough, and it was an olive oil spray that I like to use because of the flavor. Now, the other thing that's important with phyllo is that once you unroll it, you keep it covered in between taking the sheets out so that it doesn't dry out. It's very delicate. As you can kind of see, here's the layers. Kind of like sheets of paper, or it can be much more like sheets of paper if you allow it to dry. So we want to keep it covered so that the air doesn't make it start to break apart. And here's how I typically do it. Take the pile and I slide them down to the end. So there's a plastic backing here on the counter, and then I cover it with the rest of the plastic, and I have a very slightly damp kitchen towel, clean one, that I will put over it, and that keeps just enough moisture. It doesn't make the phyllo wet. It just keeps whatever moisture it has in it in the sheets. So then you peel it back, and it's kind of one sheet at a time. It's very delicate, so be patient. There are times when the phyllo may tear, but that's okay. It'll bake just the same. And it's okay if it doesn't quite fit your pan. This is a typical size pan that it will fit in, but you see I have a little more length on one end. And what I'll do with that, let me cover this back up. what I do with that is I make sure the next time I run the extra end up the other side. So now I'm going to brush, lightly brush, and again being careful not to tear the phyllo onto the surface so that it prevents it from sticking to the next layer.
So this is the anti-glue, not the glue.
Right. And next sheet. Cup. And this process goes on until we're about halfway through. That was fast.
That was 8 minutes.
Okay, went by fast.
We run cold water in it, right?
Yep.
And why we run cold water on the hot eggs?
Because it stops them cooking.
Well, and the other thing it's supposed to do is that it helps to separate the cooked egg whites from the shell when you're ready to peel them.
What are you doing?
Adding some ice.
Why we're adding ice to boiled eggs?
Same.
Interesting sounds.
And those will sit for a little while and get completely cool.
Alright, so we are at the point where we're about 2/3 through one roll of the phyllo, and I feel like we've got a good base to our spanakopita here, so I'm going to go ahead and call that middle since we have quite a lot of filling. I'm going to go ahead and what we'll do is when we're at the midpoint, we're going to put about half of what we've made as the filling into the pan, and I'll show you what we do next. All the flavor. You don't need to put any salt in this recipe because the feta has a lot of saltiness to it. And adding salt would really just overwhelm the flavor. The olive oil brings out all that flavor too, especially in the spinach and the dill. And you really can't have too much onion in this dish. Green onion, spring onion. We'll call it spring onion since it's spring. And everything fresh in the springtime just makes you feel more alive. Okay, so now I go back to my phyllo, and I'm going to put a layer here, and it just provides a little bit of sturdiness to the middle of the dish since it's got the filling in it. Make sure to brush all the edges with the butter so that they can stick together to the bottom layers. And now we're going to put the second half of the filling. And the spinach definitely gets much softer. It loses some of its water into the dish. So it comes out very mixed together with the rest of the ingredients. And these are the times when I wish I had a bigger pan, because, you know, you don't make this every day, and this in our household won't last very long. Probably a matter of 2 days before all of this is gone. And you can see that the amount that I want to make is actually bigger than the pan I have. So I really should just buy a bigger pan and make more less often. But this is not my ideal kitchen setting either. I would rather have a much bigger kitchen. This is what we have for now, so we are not letting that stop us. Okay, and now we're going to resume with the top layers of the phyllo. And as you can see, my phyllo is getting slightly drier on the ends, which is okay because we're almost done. Come back when we put all the layers on and we're ready to prepare it for the oven. So I have all the layers in place. I have buttered every layer, and you see we have a little bit of overlap here, which we're just going to take the time to tuck in so that it looks much prettier when it comes out of the oven. So I'm going to use my handy butter knife. This is just how I do it. And I'm going to tuck the corners in. And then I'm going to go around the dish, tucking them in so it kind of wraps the pastry all together. And when you cut it, it'll be a piece that has phyllo all the way around it on the edges. The corner pieces of every dish are always the favorite pieces anyway, right?
For some people. This I might say yes, but not for everything. Like brownies for me, I would rather have a middle piece.
Oh, the corner piece for me.
I like soft brownies, not crunchy ones.
Well, the corners have the most flavor.
I don't think so.
You're wrong. The
But
heel
see?
or the corner of the meatloaf?
Nope, you can have it.
Oh, most definitely. That one has so much flavor.
Now bread, I like the end of a French loaf, yeah. Especially if it's fresh baked. But see, it works out. You get what you like, I get what I like.
There's something for everyone's
Right.
taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of flip it over and tuck it in. Sometimes you need to make a little more room. But what's the most important part is what's going to happen next, and that is because we're going to cut through the phyllo and create all the pieces or the servings, because if you don't cut the phyllo before it bakes, of course, you know that phyllo is going to become very crispy in the oven, which is what we want it to do. But then, if you go to cut it once it's baked, it just kind of crumbles and falls apart because the phyllo is so crispy and light. And you really don't want that. Okay, so it's all tucked in. A little more butter. Can't have too much butter. We're butter people. So I'm going to take my sharp knife and I'm going to just pierce right through all the layers of the phyllo. And it doesn't matter how big or small you want to make your pieces. Just keep in mind that what you cut,
I'll have this piece.
no, what cut is going to be the size of your serving. There's no going back once you've baked it. We tend to like having lots of pieces, lots of small pieces, regardless of what LP that might think.
Well, it makes it nice little pick up a piece and snack on it, and that's part of what
So-
happens during the day.
What meal of the day is spanakopita best for?
All of them.
That's what I thought you'd say.
All of them.
This tends to be our only meal on Easter. And, you know, it's a one sit-down meal, but then the reference before about snacking. This is always the most favorite snack.
Which is why it only lasts maybe 2 days at
Maybe,
most.
depending how many people are in the house, in which you might need to make 2 of them.
Right. Okay.
So now we're ready to put this in the oven, and when it starts baking, all the layers will rise and separate because of the butter, and you'll start to see a very flaky, light pie crust around each one.
And what temperature are we baking at?
This is going in at 375. It depends how fast you want it to cook, as long as you don't exceed the timing on how it looks. So you really want it to have a medium golden brown all over the top, at which point you'll know it's done. But it typically bakes for about 30 minutes.
And you'll be smelling it at least 2/3 of the way through
Yes,
that.
yes. We don't have smell-o-vision on this
Right.
channel, but if you could, you would really enjoy it.
Okay, you ready for the oven?
Yep.
There we go. Ooh. Okay, so the window's not very clean, but you can see it in there, and now it's
Look at how beautiful this romaine lettuce is. Just cleaning it inside and out, because this is going to be the basis for our green within our lamb dish that we're going to make. So, make sure that we get any remaining earth from these leaves. Before we cut it. You could use any kind of lettuce, really. I mean, I don't think iceberg would do very well for this recipe. You need something sturdy. But you might have other types of lettuces that you like. Or any other kind of green, depending on what kind of taste you prefer. I think with the flavors that we put in this dish, it's best to have something with not too strong a flavor, like a mustard green or a collard green. You wouldn't want something like that. But, you know, whatever is to your liking.
And so for this recipe today, we're going to use 2 full heads of romaine lettuce.
So, alright, so time to cut this up. Of course, we're going to cook this romaine lettuce, so we need a lot of it to make our greens because it is going to wilt while cooking. And we can use all of it except for the stump.
And it's cut up fairly roughly. It's not a fine cut by any means because it does wilt down, right?
Yep.
And here's our little helper today, waiting for any random food to fall from the sky. She loves green stuff like lettuce and spinach. And our second helper, who just wants whatever Sierra has. Hi, Maxie. He says no.
He says, that's not what I smell.
He says, okay, I'll try it. He took it away to investigate.
Yeah, he usually has to test it out, take it to somewhere safe where he can look it over really well before deciding if it's edible or not.
Taste test it a couple times, spit it out a couple times, and then finally decide.
Yeah, especially if Sierra comes over to get it, then it's definitely edible.
Mm-hmm.
Worth his time. Our bowl's going to be nice and full. All right, we're going to set that aside. So look at this beautiful, beautiful lamb that we found. It was quite a story, what we went through to get this beautiful lamb. We went out yesterday to do our normal grocery shopping, and of course we knew we were going to be cooking lamb today and had it on our list. But when we got to the store, there were quite a few things going on. There were arrows on the floor so that you could only go one direction down each aisle of the store. There were people milling about, not really paying attention to the 6 feet apart.
Or the arrows.
Or the arrows. People with and without masks, and people really not terribly concerned about being too close to one another. So with that on our minds and our masks on our faces, we attempted to get through the store as safely as possible, knowing what we were supposed to do. And we left the store and completely forgot about the lamb until we were all the way home. So with the main ingredient missing for our Easter meal, we later in the day had to go back out, and we thought we didn't want to drive as far as we had earlier in the day because it was getting later, and we decided to stop at a different store. Well, there was a line around the store, and so Elpida had to wait in the line just to get in to see if they had lamb. Meanwhile, Mr. Woodworker and I drove to another store across the street to see if they had lamb, where people were doing the same. They were going in the exit door and out the entrance door, and they didn't have any lamb either. So going back to where we started, we went to the same store, and they had, of course, this beautiful lamb. By that time, we were getting hungry, and when we came outside from the store, we could smell this fantastic barbecue smell from a restaurant across the street. So while we hadn't intended to have barbecue for dinner, that's what we ended up bringing home. So that's the story of the lamb.
Right.
So I usually use lamb chops, and this is, again, just amazing quality of meat, and we're going to season it up a little bit before putting it in the pan. I'm going to use a little salt, sea salt. Doesn't need a lot. We'll use some pepper. Lamb has a lot of unique flavor, and I think it pairs really well with everything else we're adding to the pan that we're going to cook it in. A little bit of garlic powder, not much, it doesn't need to be overwhelming garlic. And now we're going to add some olive oil to our heated pan.
And being an American, not Greek, I had never had this dish before until I was invited over for Easter dinner. And I absolutely fell in love with the dish. And after that, I've since convinced Mr. and Mrs. Woodworker that it's not only an Easter dish. So occasionally we have it when we find good lamb.
And thankfully, it's not as hard to find anymore as it used to be here in the States, I guess, depending on where you live, but it can sometimes prove quite a challenge to find it depending on what your grocery stores carry. But typically around this time of year, most stores will begin carrying lamb.
Right. And so then we're gonna use some onion in here, and we use about half the onion this size, which is about a small to medium, cut up semi-fine, not like minced, but a pretty fine cut.
And then we've got in this dish, we've got green onion again and fresh dill, which is amazing. It has a wonderful smell to it, especially when you're cutting it up.
Right, the flavors and the smells that are going on today are just amazing.
It's a very simple dish. We've got some very fresh things from the garden, fresh lamb that was cut, and fresh lettuce, and we're going to put it all together for you as we go. So our oil is ready, so I'm going to go ahead and put the onions in and just give them a stir so that they can start becoming a little translucent. And one of the best smells I've ever smelled is olive oil and onion. I don't know why, that's just one of my favorite things. Ever since I started cooking Greek food, it's just been amazing. All right. And next thing in the pot is going to be the lamb. I'm going to put them seasoning side down so I can do the other side. These are very thick chops, which is delicious. They'll get very tender in the pot because this is going to be cooked over time. It's not a dish you can rush.
About how long do you usually cook this?
It's going to be a couple of hours.
Okay. And do you turn the chops over at some point when they get brown on one side?
Yes. So we're going to want to cook or sear the meat first. And that's before we're going to add the rest of the ingredients and some water to help it cook longer over time. It'll become a little bit more like a stew once we get the edges all seared, so that they have some color.
Alright, so we'll work on that and come back when they're browned on both sides.
Now I'm turning the lamb over because it's getting browned on the first side. Look at the gorgeous color on that. Make sure to brown them on both sides. You can see the onions are getting brown as well. That just adds to the flavor.
And the aroma of this cooking lamb and onions is just amazing.
Now that I got the lamb turned over and it's searing nicely on both sides, I'm going to go ahead and add the dill and the green onion. It's going to just kind of sit on top of the lamb as it continues cooking until that second side is brown. And now you've got that really fresh smell coming up out of the pan as it gets heated up.
Okay, so it's cooked down a little bit. You can smell the dill and the lamb and the onions.
Now we're going to add some water. And the amount, we'll start with enough to cover the meat. I'm going to keep the temperature of the pot on about medium. And this is the point where it's going to take a little while to cook, because we're going to go ahead and add a layer of lettuce, which is cool. And we want it to get pretty wilted before we add more. And as we add layers of the lettuce, we're going to cover it up. And wait for it to go down before adding
It's
more.
your favorite kind of potato, the red ones?
Yes, my favorite kind of potato. So we're going to cook some of these to go along with our meal. Potatoes are pretty common table fare, whether you're having just vegetables or whether you're having a meat dish. But typically they use more of a white potato, russet potatoes, something with more of a thicker skin. And I don't particularly like those as well as I like these, because you can eat the skins with this. Very tasty. Adds a lot of flavor to me, as well as the texture of the potato. So we're going to go ahead and cut some of these up and cook them in the oven. This is not a Greek method by any means. It's just what we like.
Okay. And here,
Spanakopita is looking very good.
ooh, yummies.
It's got that nice golden brown on all sides. I think I'm going to leave it in for a couple of more minutes. The middle parts need a little bit more browning, so I've turned the pan around, and it should come out nice and even here in just a few minutes.
Okay. Okay, potatoes.
Potatoes. And these are kind of large. You can use the regular size ones, or the, what do they call them, new potatoes, the baby ones. As long as you cut them up small.
And part of the reason you cut them up small is because the roasting time, so they can cook all the way through and get browned.
Just like that.
And we'll cut all those up and then come back when you're ready to season. So the spanakopita is now browned enough.
Lovely. Just lovely.
Awesome. Our fricassee is still cooking down. And do we need to adjust the oven temperature for the potatoes to go in?
Yeah, I'm going to turn it up some.
Now 400. Okay. And we're still working on potatoes.
So you can see that our first layer of lettuce has wilted quite substantially, so we're going to go ahead and put another layer on. Okay. So we're going to add some onion to our potatoes. Big surprise, we're adding onion to something. But I think there's very few things that can't be improved by a little bit of onion. Except maybe dessert. We don't typically put it in dessert.
So far, yeah.
Haven't found an onion dessert yet.
Where there's a will, there's a way. We'll have to search for that.
just gonna put it here for now. A little bit more. It's a lot of potato.
Yeah, and when it bakes in the oven, roasts in the oven, that onion will caramelize and add a really nice flavor to the potatoes.
There we go.
So now you've poured the potatoes and the onions that were cut up into the larger mixing bowl. And what else do you add to it?
We are going to add some ranch mix. That's our family favorite and kind of an old recipe, but you know, it's got a lot of great flavor in it, and so that's what we're going to use. And get some olive oil, of course. More olive oil.
Yeah.
You have a very well stocked pantry for a Greek family if you have olive oil, cheese, and wine.
Well, we're good. See? We've got the wine, we've got the olive oil, we've got cheese in the fridge. So we're good to go.
Good to go. So with the oil on the potatoes, I just throw in the ranch salad dressing seasoning. Stir it up with the onions and the potatoes. Make sure they're nicely coated.
So a more traditional Greek potato flavor seasoning would be what?
It would be potatoes with olive oil, salt, and pepper, really.
What about lemon?
You could also
or...
put some oregano, and then to finish it, you would put a little bit of lemon on the end.
There is some other potatoes that we cooked where you have lemon more throughout the dish though, right?
Yeah.
Lemon is a big flavor note in Greek cooking, right?
Most definitely. And oregano.
Yeah. And so again, with the olive oil spray on the pan, just to help with, even though the potatoes are coated, this does help with them coming off the pan instead of staying on there.
It also helps with browning, which is what we're really after.
Yeah, and this is a nice heavyweight aluminum pan too for baking.
Okay. You can see the herbs that are part of the mix on the potatoes. It's so delightful. Spread them out as evenly as you can, making sure that as many of the potatoes as possible have contact with the pan.
And again, that helps with the browning, right?
Right.
So they're a nice crispy on the edge, but then still light and fluffy potato. And then about how long do these cook in the oven?
They'll probably take anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes, and you just have to watch them for the browning that you prefer.
And there they go.
Right, so we are going to make the finish for the lamb dish, the fricassee, with lemons. So we're going to make the finish for the lamb dish, the fricassee. For when it's done, we're going to make an egg lemon sauce, which is pretty traditional flavoring at the end of lots of different dishes. So I'm going to get some fresh lemons, and I'm going to roll them on the counter to kind of break up a little bit of the fiber inside, so that most of the juice will come out. The softer it is on the outside, the more juice comes out. drawer. Small kitchen, things can't get too lost.
Well, we always say that.
I'm going to use my juicer here to try to get out every little bit of lemon juice. And the thing I like about this is, for the most part, it prevents the seeds from going down into the bowl. And a little pulp won't hurt anybody.
I know that's good
And it
stuff.
just smells so good.
That lemon is so fresh and spring smelling.
Oh, last one. Okay.
So we've got the juice of 4 lemons in this little bowl.
Yep. And we're going to add some eggs. Beat them all up. We're going to beat them up.
And the egg and the lemon need to be whisked together really, really well for this sauce, right?
Yes. And this is my workout for the day, right here. At least on one side of my body.
Your arm workout.
And we have, once again, jumping ingredients.
Oh, that lemon smells so good.
Now we have to wait for the fricassee to be just right and the lettuce to be very wilted so that we can get some of the juice out of the pan.
Let's check on it because we have added our 3rd layer of lettuce and it's already wilting down, but it still has a way to go, we can see.
Yep. Might
So-
need a little bit of water too. I'll have to check that.
Okay.
No, I think we're good. So there's...
But as you can see, there's a nice broth working on that. Coming up from the lamb that's on the bottom with the onion, the spring onion, the dill, and the lettuce cooking down. And that lettuce will take on that flavor of the lamb as it all wilts down together.
Okay, just a few more minutes. Okay, as you can see, our potatoes came out beautifully, nice and crispy and browned. And the
Yeah.
smell in this kitchen is amazing.
Yeah.
So we are also finished with cooking our fricassee. I'm going to turn the heat off, and you can kind of see it's kind of simmering there. And we want to introduce our egg lemon sauce to it, but we can't just pour it in because the egg would probably curdle if we do that. It will cook the egg, and we really don't want that. We want it to be more of an integration. So what we're going to do is take some of the sauce out of the pan and put it into our egg lemon mixture so that we can whisk them together, and it'll acclimate the eggs in essence to the heat of the pan before putting it in. We'll whisk that together. Just a little at a time.
And the broth is really rich, nice color. And you can see all the lettuce has cooked down and wilted very nicely.
heat.
Your fork just went into the sauce.
Well, that's what happens. And now it's going to seep over all the greens and down to the lamb. And flavor everything so beautifully. It's exactly the right color.
And does it need to cook any extra now, or
It
it's
doesn't
basically
need to
done?
cook anymore. I'm just going to put the lid on it and it'll be ready to serve.
Excellent.
All right, friends, the cooking has finished, and welcome to our Easter table. We have plated lamb, and we have the Greek tradition. The eggs that you see on the table are supposed to be colored, but we didn't have an ability to find paint for dye. What's the difference? Paint. This
That's Mr. Woodworker going there.
right. So they're going to be white for this Easter only. We know this was an uncommon video for us, but this is one of the few days of the year we did not like to do a very sexist definition of manual labor, because women always cook on Easter Sunday, but in Greece, of course, we go out and we put a whole lamb on a spit, and then everyone in the neighborhood will come, and that lamb will not last long. This is an adaptation of the original Greek tradition that wouldn't work today for many reasons. I don't think the apartment complex will let us put a lamb on a spit, and I don't think that people will come and visit because of restrictions with COVID-19. In any case, we do hope you enjoyed this episode that is primarily the labor of love of Ms. Woodworker and Elpida. And if you did, we appreciate a thumbs up. If you didn't, the other button works as well. Share, like, subscribe. Let us know what else you would like to see in our channel. But we'll return to its normal programming after this episode. From the Garage Woodworker, Ms. Woodworker, Elpida, the Urban Homesteading channel, and we want to express Easter wishes to everyone on the world, and to the hope that we are going to get over this crisis very soon. I'm sorry, Elpida, for the word crisis. Farewell, stay safe,
Stay safe.
and happy Easter to all.